everyone, I'm Pam Laricchia from livingjoyfully.ca, and today I'm here with Noah Tetzner. Hi, Noah.
Hi, Pam.
Hi, did I say your last name right?
Yes, you did.
I forgot to ask before. Usually I try to get that nailed down first. Anyway, a couple of months ago, Noah sent me a beautifully passionate email about how excited he is to be unschooling after leaving high school last fall. I get questions pretty regularly about whether unschooling is viable if you don't start when kids are young. And I thought Noah would be a great person to speak to that. And I love the idea of sharing his story. So to get us started, Noah, can you share with us a bit about you and your family?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Noah. I'm 17 years old. My family and I live in Green Bay, Wisconsin. We've always lived here. I've grown up here. I have my mom, my dad, my sister named Madeline, who is a year younger than I. And yeah, we've lived in Green Bay, Wisconsin our whole lives. And I'm currently in 11th grade, so a junior in high school. And from 1st through 8th grade, I was homeschooled by my mom, and it was beautiful. My sister and I were both homeschooled. We were super active in the homeschool community. You know, we were in all sorts of co-ops and geography fairs, and we had a lot of great homeschooling friends, and it was awesome. But then when it would have been, my first year in high school, when I was going into 9th grade, my parents sat down, my sister and I, and we had the conversation about possibly going to school. And it happened to be a private school in Green Bay where I live. And I guess we just had that discussion because, you know, we were getting older, and perhaps like so many homeschooling or unschooling parents feel this way, you know, well, I can't teach my kids science, or I can't teach my kids math, you know, where are they going to get that? They won't get it from me. They're going to need it from somebody else. And my parents sent my sister and I off to a private school. And for the first year, it was really, you know, for the most part, it was good. I had the opportunity to showcase a lot of my passions in history. I had an awesome history teacher. But then there was a lot of sort of negative experiences, I would say, especially as I was growing older and really starting to discover for the first time my own passions and my own desires. And, you know, between being in school for 8 hours a day and the massive amounts of homework, especially at what they might call an academically rigorous school such as that one, there's absolutely no time for the things that I was passionate about. But, you know, I had the conversation with my mom. Actually, my mom brought it up. It's funny because she actually had taken my sister out of school just because it wasn't a good fit. My sister was experiencing some self-esteem issues. She didn't really feel intelligent, you know, because sort of her passions and desires were being, you know, oppressed there. And shortly after my mom had taken my sister out of school, I was taken out this past school year of 2017. I was taken out in October, if I'm correct. My sister was taken out, and then my mom had the decision to bring me back home. And that's when she first discovered unschooling. And she just thought it was the coolest thing ever. Noah, you know, look at unschooling. And she was reading all sorts of books. And one of the books that I love, it's on my shelf over there, actually. I think it's called Unschooling Rules by Clark Aldrich, if I'm correct. Yeah. And my mom, that was one of the sort of gateway books that really led to us just becoming super passionate about unschooling. So I suppose, after that, the rest is kind of history. And here I am living this joyful unschooling life and listening to your podcast and hearing of all the lives lived to the fullest by unschoolers. So This is awesome.
Oh, that is a really cool story. Now, so when your mom came to you, so you were still in school and she mentioned unschooling to you. So when you left, you knew what unschooling was and you guys kind of just dove into that. Is that what you were expecting when you decided to leave school?
Yeah. I suppose that was, So to clarify, when my mom had decided to take us out of school, it was an interesting scenario because, and I suppose maybe I'll discuss later why we were taken out of school. But if I'm just sort of skimming the surface here, when she had decided to take my sister and I out of school, she had already discovered unschooling shortly after my sister was taken out. But then she was really, showing it to me, and I discovered articles and books and John Taylor Gatto and all of these cool figures that I thought I just really embraced this style of, this philosophy of learning never stops. And just because you're not being taught by someone or being taught the things that somebody feels you need to learn, you can still learn. So yeah, I was pretty familiar with unschooling upon leaving. It was pretty natural because it was sort of like I was being groomed to leave in that sense.
Well, that's cool to think of it that way. So yeah, so you were diving in and learning about it while you were still in school?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. And you're welcome to dive in as deep as you like. Don't worry about that. So you were learning about it. And then, so was it learning about unschooling that excited you enough to choose to leave?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. My parents always sort of left the decisions up to their kids, up to my sister and I. So it was very much my decision to leave school. Now, my mom was really, coaxing me. Come on, Noah.
She was excited.
Yeah, she was very excited, as I know many people are, about unschooling when they discover it. And, I was like, I don't know. What about school? What about this? What about this? Concerning myself with all of the outcomes, because at school, they're obsessed with outcomes, right? How are you going to support yourself upon leaving high school? And, after having a conversation with both my mom and my dad, my mom and I talking more about sort of how I would embrace lifelong learning, and my dad, who owns his own small business, saying, well, Noah, it's quite possible for you to make a reasonable income based on the scenario that you have. He owns a small real estate business right out of high school. So I don't really think that school would be deterring you from success, sort of, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so then you did a lot of your deschooling then while you were still in school. I guess maybe that kind of helped because you could see what you were doing day in and day out, right? As you were learning about it. So you could compare them right there as you were trying to decide, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's kind of an interesting, kind of a unique scenario if you think about it, because I had already discovered unschooling in those final weeks and months of my being at school. So you mentioned deschooling, and I guess I'll just touch on that. Is when we came out of school, my sister and I, there was definite deschooling that needed to occur, just because although we had been homeschooled for 8 years prior to me going to school, anybody who's been a part of a school for some period of time or any period of time at all, I'm sure knows this, is once you become a part of a school, it's just so ingrained in your lifestyle. Waking up so early, going to school, coming back, doing homework, trying to please teachers, and doing the same thing day after day after day really becomes your lifestyle and really becomes sort of your identity, when you spend so much time. Who am I at school? What do the teachers think of me? What do my fellow students think of me? So when we came back, we really just took it easy, learning never stops. And we certainly continued to learn, but it was always learning what we were passionate about. And we still do that, of course, but especially, deschooling. We just needed to take a big exhale when we came out of school. So Yeah.
I'd be interested to hear more about what those first weeks and months were like, because like you were saying, like in school, you define yourself through the parameters of school, right? How are people seeing me, judging me? How am I doing by the standards and the expectations within that environment? And then all of a sudden, out of school, when you begin to deschool and get to unschooling, all of a sudden you kind of have to define your own parameters, right? Your own expectations. When you all of a sudden have control of your days, like you said, all of a sudden I don't have to wake up early. All of a sudden I don't have to be here by a certain time. And that I mean, I remember for myself, even when I stopped work and started staying home, it's like coming up, it's like redefining yourself, isn't it? Like figuring out, what do I want to do when I'm not being told what I have to do? So how did that go for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I just remember being in school, waking up at, 6:30, getting ready for the day. And I would be like, okay, I'm going to get this done today. I'm going to do this, 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 and this. And I remember my list was never school related. Like it was never, I'm going to do this homework assignment. I was like, wouldn't it be awesome if I could go for a bike ride today and, get some exercise and experience some nature? Wouldn't it be great if I could hang out with my friends and on Skype or something like that, and really spend time doing the things we love, playing our historical strategy games and doing all these things, and I'm going to read this book and I'm going to do this. But I remember I would have this list of things that I wanted to achieve, and I would go to school and I would be like, okay, after school, as soon as I come home, I'm going to do this. And I would be like, I shouldn't be getting much homework today. But I just remember coming home after school, and I usually had massive amounts of homework that restricted me from doing those things. But even if I didn't have homework, just the exhaustion that I felt after the end of the day, I just remember wanting to lie down on the couch essentially right after I came home. But being at home and having this freedom, it really allowed for so much extra time, which is just such a beautiful thing. Because so many of us live such busy lifestyles, but I think those moments where we get to reflect on ourselves and on our own dreams and our desires, and thinking about, just what I want today to look like, those are just such valuable moments, And I remember, just having the time to do the things that I loved, going for bike rides, waking up, the birds chirping, sun shining, and going for these beautiful bike rides, because that's just something I love to do. As well as just, I run a podcast, of course, a history podcast, which I've always loved history. And, I had time to do that. I had time to read all sorts of history books and write things. And, eventually I might like to write my own book one day. So I've sort of started outlining things for that, and just, you have all of this time, which is such a beautiful thing. And it's not for one moment wasteful, because you're putting it towards things that you want to do, things that are of benefit to yourself and your family, and spending time with your family, which I think is just so awesome. Because, when I was at school, my sister and I definitely grew apart. We had our own sort of friend circles, and seems like we were always sort of in a bad mood waking up, that early, as well as my parents. I didn't really have to come to my parents for anything. I never really came for them to any homework related things. It was just sort of this really creating distance between myself and my family, which, looking back, we're like, thank God that we live this life that we do today. Thank God that stage of our life was over, because now we can listen to each other, we can help each other, you know what I mean, and we can really just learn to understand each other, which I think is just so incredibly necessary when living amongst other people. So
I love that, Noah. And what a great point. I'd never really thought of that. Like when you talked about how it distanced you from your parents, I mean, and your sister as well, but even with your parents, because, there aren't really that many questions for when you're doing homework, et cetera, right? Because, homework is very, or structured. There's the word I was looking for. They've got their questions, and exactly what answers you're supposed to give, and they have nothing to do with anybody else's opinion, right? They're just to do with the textbook or what the teacher said. So exactly. Even when you come home, when you're doing homework, you're disengaged from everything all around you. It's still all about school, even when you're at home, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Oh, that's so interesting. Yeah. So did you have any trouble? Or, because you were talking about how now that you were home, you could do all the things that you had been wanting to do. You now had time for it. Like, as you said, time is such a beautiful piece of unschooling, right? We don't realize how many extra busy things that we're doing until we start to get to choose what we do. And we actually say, oh, is that something I actually want to be doing? Oh, no, I don't have to do it anymore. But then you also don't do, the typical things that people are expected to do. So did you have a time where you were thinking about or asking yourself, like you said, all these things have value, but was there a time when you had to shift what you valued from what school values and those type of accomplishments to truly recognizing the value of a bike ride, for
Yeah,
example?
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mentioned deschooling before, and when I came home, it was finally like, because you're pounding, hammering to get these assignments that other people would have you do done, essentially, and it's so ironic because they're not benefiting yourself or giving life to yourself, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Something that somebody else would have you do. But when I came home, I was just like, whoa, I have all this time now, and it was just kind of like, wow, what do I do with this? What can I do with this? And it was kind of, if I'm honest, it was sort of a rocky start at first when we first started unschooling, because I think both my sister and I, it would be fair to say, we're both sort of in the school mindset in the initial weeks that we left. Like when, we had conversations with my mom about what sort of things we wanted to learn after we left school. My sister and I very much had this approach of it needs to be structured. Like, well, Mom, we need to do this, and this.
Yeah.
Because that's what you do to be successful or something. But no, it was rocky in the beginning. It was just, we were still our old selves in the sense of we weren't listening to each other. We really didn't understand each other. I mean, a lot can happen in a year, and we were at school for 2 years, and certainly a lot had happened, a lot of growth, a lot of, like not in a totally bad way, but a lot of issues brought up, a lot of things that some of us were carrying that we didn't have any idea about because we were so busy focused on school. Yeah. And but when we left, it was a rocky start, but we didn't give up. We were determined to make this work because we knew that it could work and that it was the right decision. So after a few weeks, we really started, we had a lot of deep conversations, a lot of listening to each other, a lot of understanding, a lot of sort of paradigm shifts. And then after that, it was just such a beautiful thing. My sister really started blossoming. I feel like I started blossoming. My mom did as well. We all started to pursue the things that we were passionate about, which I think is just so beautiful. And I think when you're young, that's just such an opportunity to do those things. I think this is just such a monumental time in a human being's life, are the childhood and especially the teenage years, and for so many, it's in those teenage years, the years right between childhood and adulthood, that so much is lost, right? Because you're, sort of whisking yourself away, always focusing on the next thing. Like, okay, by age 25, I'm going to be graduating college and I'm going to work here at age 18. And and I have to take all of these tests and stuff. And it's like, no, just what do you want? What are you passionate about? What can you do for yourself? There's so much opportunity and it's all around us. So yeah, I think that's such a great thing.
Yeah, I think your point about especially those teenage and even young adult years while you're in college, right? Because you're not allowed really to understand yourself or to respect your own wishes and dreams and just passions, right? It's always for someday, I'll get through high school, I'll get through college, and then I can finally like make my own choices and do my own things. But by that point, so often you're locked into, you're locked into a career all of a sudden because at some point you had to make a choice about your college program, right? So
Yeah,
then all of a
right.
sudden you're locked into a career, whether you like it or not at this point, and then maybe even, college loans. So you got to get out there and get working right away. And you're just pulled through that whole thing. And when you thought you would find, on college graduation, you thought, oh, finally, now it's my life, it's under my control. You realize, oh, there's all this that's come up. And again, I have little choices, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. So
Absolutely.
we were talking about you and your sister for those first few weeks at home. Were a lot of those paradigm shifts about figuring out ways to live together? Like you said, you guys, understandably grew apart because when you went to school, because you weren't seeing each other. And as we were talking about, when you got home, you were each doing your school things, right? So there
Yeah.
wasn't a lot of having to figure things out together and live together. I think that was one of the big things. The first few months when my kids came home from school, even though they were younger, it was so much about us learning who each other was. Like we really didn't know
Yeah.
each other, right?
Yeah.
Was that yours?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that was your experience?
Yeah, no, and I just love how you phrased it. It is like we didn't know each other, you know. We only knew ourselves, and we were, and I think we were like super selfish in the sense of, it was very much what's next for me or something like that, you know, always focusing on
Mhm.
what we felt that we needed or something like that. But no, absolutely, and yeah, we really had the opportunity, like I said, just lifelong learning, and that's really what has happened since leaving school. You know, when you're at school, they really teach learning as if it's a temporary thing. You know, because okay, you're going to learn about the ancient Roman Empire from this week to this week, and then we're going to move on, and you're going to learn about, you know, mitochondria and cells from this week to this week. But it's like, no, like we had some rabbits in our yard, some baby bunnies, and it's spring here in Wisconsin where I live, and it sounds like, you know, just a bunch of rabbits, but these bunnies and these rabbits had these babies, and we actually have a garden, and they had actually made a nest underneath a plant, and we were just watching every day, the baby bunnies in there, and the mom would come out, and then she would bring some food back for the babies, and the next thing you knew, they were running all over the yard, and pretty soon they grew up. And I bring that up simply because we actually took the time to explore the life of rabbits and the life of bunnies. You know, we did all sorts of research on what is the life like, what is life like for a rabbit, what is the lifespan of a rabbit, all these questions. You know, we read the classic book, Watership Down,
Yeah.
which is, of course, has rabbits as the central characters. You know, so that was really an interesting way of understanding the world of these incredible creatures. But I bring that up simply because that's something that we were passionate about. We were watching these rabbits outside, and my mom's like, wow, isn't that cool? And I'm like, yeah. And my sister's like, yeah. And we're like, okay, we're going to really just dig deep into exploring the life of rabbits. And we did it. We didn't even like structure it. We would just find things by ourselves and bring it up. And well, I think this, and making sort of nature observations. But no, and I think learning is such a natural thing in people, you know, wanting to explore, wanting to learn more. You know, human beings have been learning for millennia. I think that's crucial to the existence of sort of the human race. Is, you know, um, when we needed to go somewhere faster and farther, we invented the wheel. When we needed documents and scholarly research, and, you know, the Bible and everything else more at the fingertips of people, we invented the printing press. You know, and we've always been learning new ways to do things and looking at things in different ways. And you know, in school, there's not that, because I think we learn for two reasons. We learn because we're interested, or we learn because it's a necessity, right? Like when I started my podcast, I had to learn how to work a microphone and a mixer. That was a necessity, but of course I was passionate about it. But I just bring that up, the whole rabbit thing, because that was just something we were passionate about. And I think it was just so beautiful that we spent so much time on it, but we really just, um, Learned so much because of it.
Oh, I think that is such a great example. So that was soon after you left school last year?
Yeah. Yes,
Yeah.
it was.
So I mean, to me, that's such a beautiful example because when you first leave, like you really do look at the learning that you do. Like you realize that, oh, look, we didn't come up with a formal plan or a formal outline for us to follow, and we each dove into it. Like when you're first leaving school and you're changing that paradigm, you're really paying attention, and that's when you're oh, look, we did learn tons about rabbits, and we didn't have it structured, and we still kept learning, and we brought like fiction books into our learning, which typically doesn't cross in school, right? That's all your nonfiction stuff, except when you're in English class, then you read fiction, that kind of stuff. And that is just a beautiful example of that paradigm shift from, as you were saying, school learning to lifelong learning, to learning is everywhere. And a year or two from now, you'll have another example like rabbits, but it will be like breathing to you. You won't even, kind of notice it, but it's so important at first when you're deschooling to notice that, because that's what helps you understand how, unschooling isn't about not learning. It's just about learning in a different way. And you can see the difference. Like you will remember that rabbit story so long versus, pick a class that you weren't interested in school. And I bet you barely remember, past the test, what was there. So it's just such a wonderful example of the difference between those kinds of learning, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And just learning in such a natural way, isn't that as human beings just so natural? I mean, to some who have been brought up with this whole school mindset, it sounds like such a radical concept, but no, that's so natural. Everybody's so curious and everybody wants to learn. We're just sort of held back and told we need to learn what somebody said we had to learn. I don't know who. I can't point to those people that said you need to learn this, and this, but yeah.
But yeah, and a lot of that too, I think, when one leaves school, especially when they're older, right? Like you were, is uncovering that curiosity again, because you've had to dampen that with school for so many years, in that they tell you, well, this is what we're learning and this is what we're learning. And like you said, you had all sorts of other interests, but you were exhausted by the time you got home that you barely got to touch on them. Right. So, discovering that rabbits are interesting and rediscovering your curiosity to not only like ask the questions that occur to you, but to actually follow through. And like you said, we were all looking up different bits about it.
Right.
That's a big shift, isn't it? From being told to saying, hey, my curiosity is valuable, is worth getting answers to, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So what are some of the things that you've been doing then since October? I'd love to hear.
Yeah. So, it's really been just so great. So I guess I'll talk about myself first, and then I'll So I have always been a huge history fan. Ever since I was just a little boy, I've always just loved history, anything and everything about history. The Roman Empire and medieval knights and Vikings and Napoleonic time periods in the Victorian era, and I've always loved history, and I've always listened to podcasts. In fact, that's of course how I stumbled upon Exploring Unschooling, which I'm a huge fan of course. But so I decided that, why don't I take this passion of history that I have, and wouldn't it be so cool if I could share that with other people who love history? And, so I had this idea. I thought, well, I could start a podcast. I listen to a lot of podcasts. Why don't I start one? And I didn't know what to podcast about other than history, but of course, my podcast is called The History of Vikings. So it's about Vikings and Norse mythology and that whole sort of era of history. So I decided to podcast about that after I was doing some reading and discovered Norse myth and the tales of Odin and Thor and Loki. And I decided to start a podcast about that, and I called it The History of Vikings. So that was definitely a journey in itself, learning how to start a podcast, how to connect a microphone into a mixer and all of this technical stuff, which I am like so not a technical person. But I figured it out, because I was so passionate about it. And I had the opportunity to talk to a lot of experts in my field on my show. I've had Oxford, Harvard, Yale professors who are experts on Vikings. I've also talked to, some YouTubers, a lot of history YouTubers, which, I spent my childhood was filled with watching various history YouTube videos. The podcast is in a network now. It's listened to by thousands of people per week. It's really special. And I only started this podcast 2 months ago, and I've had this opportunity to connect with so many beautiful people. People have sent me emails just, asking what was that name of Thor's Hall that you mentioned in the last episode? Or, Noah, you might try learning some Old Norse so that you can pronounce the names of the Viking gods in the native language, and just exploring all of these interesting concepts. But no, that's been one of the things that I've been up to, which has been super exciting. And my sister has always been a science girl. And one of the things that she started right away when we were unschooling is she really started diving deep into medicine. She really started diving deep into, how the human body works and how different sicknesses work and, animals and nature. And she's always just loved that sort of thing. But, she's on the track to becoming a doctor one day. So, she didn't really get to spend any time at all learning all of that in school and even in science class at school, which one would think somebody who likes science would enjoy a science class at a school. She really didn't, because she was behind in some areas. As in, she didn't learn it in 5th grade when she was supposed to. She didn't learn the periodic table when she was supposed to. But she's really been diving into that, which has been beautiful. So we're really just both diving into what we're passionate about and what we love, and sharing with one another our interests and listening and just having these conversations, which is just so beautiful.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. And that's part of, as you were saying, developing that relationship with her now. And once that I remember you mentioned at the beginning, it was more, me as in, you're focused on your own needs. But isn't it cool how, as you get to know each other and working with your mom, how she's able to support you both. And then you learn that it's not like me versus her, that
right.
all work together. Like that's a big paradigm shift, a big mindset shift, isn't it? And then all of a sudden everybody can support everybody else. And then all of a sudden they become interesting and you can happily express your interest in their interest. And then conversations are just so exciting at that point, aren't they? When everybody's just sharing what they love.
Oh, no, that's awesome. Yeah, just everyone sharing what they're passionate about. And, my dad, absolutely, just equally with my mom, has been super engaged in what we're passionate about. And my sister's always had sort of a special bond with our dad, so they've really been sort of digging into science together, which has been really cool to watch. So, yeah, it's really special to see that, which I know you don't see in settings where you're learning a set structure of things.
Yeah, that's right. Because you have to look out for yourself in that kind of environment, right? You're expected to. Those are the expectations. This is your job. You get these marks, you're set up to only look out for yourself in that environment, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think one thing that has just been so crucial to the just the ability to, again, just focus on what we're passionate about, is the fact that grades aren't involved. Now, I mean, for some people, maybe grades work well for you because you like to have it as a way of keeping score. But I know for me personally, it's just been so refreshing to be able to leisurely read this book because I want to. Like, I don't have to worry like about taking away certain things. Like I might take away certain things than a test might say. Like it's just been so awesome to be able to do all of this.
It really opens up your perspective, doesn't it? Because
Yeah.
like you were saying, in school you would read a book, but there would be certain expectations as to the outcome, and you would have to know and pick up those answers. Like even with fiction, right? When you're expected to answer their theme questions, their style questions, there was still an answer you were supposed to have. Whereas now you, because we're all individuals, like from an experience, like your podcast experience, everybody's going to take different things from it, right? Depending on where they are. Like, so maybe it's the pronunciation that somebody latches onto, and somebody latches onto geography. Like there's just a huge range of everything within your very specific Viking, Norse history podcast, but you can see what everybody, like so many other people, are connecting to. And now all of a sudden, all of those are valuable. There's not like one kind of answer that's more valuable than another, right?
Absolutely. No, that's such an excellent point.
So what excites you the most about unschooling right now?
What excites me the most about unschooling? I think just watching it all unfold, just watching everything happen in such a beautiful way. Like I said before, so I'm 17. My sister's currently 15. We're just able to just have this time together, it's so beautiful to be able to go for walks with my mom and my sister and hang out with my dad and have discussions about what I'm learning podcasting and just sort of the real world experience in podcasting, for example. How do I have these discussions with these experts, and how do I get out the word about my podcast? How do I market my podcast? And listening to my sister, what she has to bring to the table, and just it's so exciting talking about all of our summer activities and things. It's I guess what I'm excited the most about is just watching it unfold. And, we're new to unschooling. We've only been at it for 6 months, but already it's just incredible what we've seen. And honestly, if I can be honest, I'm glad that I went to school for those 2 years, simply because I wouldn't be able to appreciate unschooling as much. And I'm so glad that I discovered this when I did, because, as a young man, eventually I might like to have my own family one day. And, of course, I would embrace the principles of unschooling in raising my children. So I think it's just so awesome that we've all discovered this lifestyle. It couldn't have happened more naturally.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. It's a lifestyle, right? It's a way of living with the people in your family. And it doesn't matter what age you are when you discover a different way, another way of living with your family. So it doesn't matter whether, your kids are 8 or 10 or 16, 17, if this way of living together appeals to you, start it whenever, right?
Absolutely. No, that's such an excellent point, because you can really have discussions with people and engage with people no matter what their age is. I remember when I was at school, I was definitely confined to friendships that were of my own age category. I couldn't really have these discussions with the adults there, simply because there was just this colossal disconnect, in the sense of, you're the student, I'm the teacher, you can't say certain things. But now that I'm doing my podcast, I've definitely made a lot of friends who just are way older than me, you know, and some are even younger than me. So it's been, you know, I'm having these awesome discussions with people who are, you know, 10, 20, 30 years older than me. And it's really incredible. You know, there's absolutely no limits. So.
Yeah. Yeah. And age isn't a thing. You know what I mean? I mean, children are capable when you're choosing what you look at, when you're passionate about things, you want to connect with others who have the same kinds of passions, because that's exciting and it's enjoyable, and their age is irrelevant at that point, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Somebody might say, well, Noah, when are you going to graduate? You know, inquiring about my age. And while the natural answer might be 18, in my heart, I almost feel like saying, well, I'm never going to graduate, because learning never stops. You know, I'm going to be having conversations with my family for the rest of my life, which is just so awesome.
Mm-hmm. The other bit I wanted to talk about, because it stood out when you were talking about how you guys are sharing your passions, right? You know, your sister's sharing about her stuff, you're sharing about what you're learning with your podcast and history, and your parents and their interests. Is it something that you notice? Because, you know, when you think about school, those are like separate topics, you know, and your sister is really focused on medicine, and you're really focused on history and podcasting. But I bet in your conversations, you are now seeing so many connections, right? Even between the things that she's talking about and the things that you're talking. The world is so much bigger all of a sudden, right? When you're not combined into subjects.
It is. Absolutely. No, yeah. And just, you know, it's hard to think of an example to correlate like something, say Vikings and in science, but no, even just like deeper than that. Just in how we interact with one another. And because since we all can see each other so passionate about something, that passion is so contagious. You know what I mean? Which is just awesome to see. So like I can get excited about science, and my sister can get excited for me about history, and we can all get excited about rabbits and everything like that. You know, it's just there's definitely been a lot of like everyone has value to bring to the table, and I love our conversations.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love that. And there is something about just knowing that someone's passionate about something, right? And it excites you. Because I remember when my daughter was really interested in going to shows, like concerts of bands, right? And I would go with her. Like at first I was going because the situation, she was going to small clubs in the city, was new to both of us, right? So I wanted to be close by. So, you know, if she wanted to leave or if she was uncomfortable, I was there, etc. But after the first few, when we were both comfortable, I kept going. I'm like, yeah, I'd love to come, because it was just so fun. These bands were people, you know, usually kids who had just graduated high school and finally able to tour with their bands, right? These small alternative bands. But they were doing what they were passionate about. They were finally free to start touring with their music. And to me, like, she loved the music and I liked the music too, but it was just so exciting to see them doing something they were so passionate about, right? Yeah, it's just so exciting to watch them and inspiring, because people are just, somebody pursuing their passion is inspiring, right? That's where I was going, I think.
Yeah. Absolutely. No. Yeah. It's incredible to see. And, there's just like, my cousin, for example, loves magic tricks. Like, he absolutely loves card tricks. He's always showing me new card tricks. And I'm just like, whoa, like, how can you even do that? And it's just, and, you know, I know nothing. I'm just dumbfounded at how it goes, but it's so exciting to see that. And then when I talk about with some of my other friends, who, you know, we've kind of grown up playing, one of the ways that we really spent fellowship together and, you know, had this time of fellowship and spent time was, we both loved history, and they were homeschooled as well. And we both played sort of historical strategy games together, where we were both commanding these armies of men. And, you know, they were super detailed, like, for people who know history, you know, they got into the details of the units and the different attack and everything like that. And we could both get excited about that. And, I know a lot of people, a lot of younger people that I know who are super passionate about video games. And why? Because of the story behind the video
Yeah.
games, it's just, it's really exciting to see things like this in other people, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just so happy when someone's just excited about their day, about what they're interested in. Like, so often when I meet other adults and stuff, I'll just say, so what do you do for fun? Right.
Yeah.
And the hard thing is so often, they're like, I don't have time for fun. Yeah. I work and take my kids to school and blah, blah, blah. But I love this planting that seed that, it's okay to have fun, to do things that are fun. And then when you find people who have passions, like it doesn't, like you said, the card tricks, whatever the passion is, it's always interesting to listen to them talk, because so much that we don't know and they're so excited. I could listen to them for ages, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, our last question here, Noah. What piece of advice would you like to share with unschooling parents who are just starting out on this journey?
I would say to those of you who are listening, who are just starting out your unschooling journey, first of all, it doesn't matter what age your children are when you're starting this journey. It doesn't matter if they're youngsters, toddlers, if you've just had children. It doesn't matter if they're teenagers or if they only have 1 year of, I guess you might call it, school left. I would just say, don't give up. Learn to listen to one another. These are your kids. That they came from you. They love you and you love them. Learn to understand them. If you can, help them to get excited. Really pay attention to what they're passionate about. And, and if you're passionate about something too, then they'll take an interest in that. Just it's learning to listen and, help your kids to think big and help them to dream big, because I think that's super important, and you yourself need to dream big as well, because just there needs to be so much inspiration in your family. And I think that's how you live joyfully, in my opinion.
Oh, that's awesome, Noah. I really love that. Yeah. That inspiration, that listening to one another and just helping them pursue whatever it is that catches their interests and their passions. That's wonderful. Wonderful advice. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me, Noah. It's been so much fun. I really appreciate your time.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you. And before we go, where's the best place for people to connect with you online? Where can they find your podcast?
Yeah, so you can find my podcast, The History of Vikings, wherever you listen to your podcasts, iTunes, Stitcher, wherever. If you wanted to get in touch with me, I also have a website, which is thehistoryofvikings.com. Or if you are a Twitter person and you like Twitter, you can follow me on Twitter at History of Viking.
Oh, that's awesome. Thanks so much, Noah. Have a great day.
You too. Thank you.